Okay, so this is the last tutorial for 2C part 1, which is our calculations. We've done our basic formulas, we've done some of the functions that weren't too hard. We're just going to have a look at the last two functions now. It's just a little bit more complicated. So we're going to have a look at, first of all, the hire rate per day for the vehicle that has been selected. So if we have a look, here's our vehicle, box van. We have a look at our vehicle rates, we can see box van, and we would be able to search for that in this table, but we then need to know which rate we are looking for, whether it's rate 1, rate 2 or rate 3. Now we would have got our rate category here, so you can see here we've got rate cat and we've got 0, and that's going to be either 0, 1, 2, 3, and we'll need to know what that is in order to be able to calculate whether we're using rate 1, rate 2 or rate 3. Now at this point I've just come back to this section here because there is a fundamental flaw with the way this quotation system works. If there are 0 conviction points and 0 accidents, then the rate category is going to work out as 0. Now, this is a similar but different task. It's not the live coursework, and the whole idea of a similar but different task is to teach you the skills that you need to complete the real coursework. So what I want you to do at this point is just ignore the fact that the rate category could be 0, because it will just make it far too complicated. So we're just going to leave it now. I've just put in here number of accidents 2, conviction points 4 to 6. It gives us a rate category of 2. So what we know here is that we're going to be looking at, for this one, a box van in rate category 2 should return us a value of £70. Now you could just type that in if you didn't want to do the formula function. Obviously you wouldn't get the mark for formula function, but we can use a VLOOKUP to actually find that information. So when we have a look in the table, well, let's build it up and see what happens. So we'll do a VLOOKUP, and the value that we're going to look up will be the vehicle type. And the table that we're going to look it up in will be this table here, which is vehicle rates. Now the question is, which column number do we go for? Well, we know this is column 1, this is column 2, 3, 4 and 5. But if we're going to be using rates 1, 2 and 3, then we're going to be using columns 3, 4 and 5. So we need to add 2 to whatever this category is here. Okay, so let's just go back. I've just messed up that, so leave that as vehicle rates. Now what we're going to do for our column index, then we shall use the rate category, but we'll add 2 to it, and that means that it will just push it along those 2 columns, so it will work. And we'll go for false, and there we go, it's come up with a £70. So let's see if we can get it to be £65 or £85. So if we go for conviction points of 0, there we go, rate category £65. Let's put number of accidents 3. Yeah, there we go, we've now got £85. Just to prove that point earlier, if I change the number of accidents to 0 and number of conviction points to 0, we've now suddenly got a higher rate per day of £25. Which doesn't feature in here because it actually comes under the minimum age, and that wasn't what we wanted. So that's a bit that I'm just showing you. There's a slight flaw in the system, but just ignore that. You could try and solve it if you want to by using some fancy if statements. It can be done, but it's not something you need to do for the real coursework. And so our final function we need to do is find out what percentage we're going to be charging for additional drivers. So if we just come back down here and have a look and see, it says that one additional driver is charged 15%, additional drivers are charged 22%. So this is going to be a straightforward if function really, that's going to look at the number of drivers. However, we've got 0, 1 and 2 additional drivers. But remember, they are stored as 1, 2 and 3 based on the options here. So you see 0 at the moment is being stored as 1. So whatever we use is going to be one more than what we were actually looking for. So let's create ourselves an if function here. So we're going to go for if, and the test that we're going to look at is look at the number of drivers. So here's our number of drivers, and we're going to say, what do we want our number of drivers to be? Well, if our number of additional drivers is 1, then it will actually be 2, won't it? Because if we look here, okay, then additional drivers 1 is the second row. So we'll have a look at that first of all. So if additional drivers is 1, i.e. 2 in this case, then we'll have a value of 15%, 0.15. Let's see what that looks like so far. Okay, so let's change that to 1. There we go, 15%. Now, at this point, we now need to say, well, what if it's not number of drivers 2? So we'll have another if function to say, well, if not 2 drivers, then if the number of drivers is equal to 2 additional, which will be 3, because it will be the third row. So remember that 2 represented 1. This time we're looking at 3. Then we're going to have 0.22%. And if it's none of those, then we'll have 0%. So let's look at that and see if that works. So 0, we have it no extra charge. 1%, so 1 extra driver, we have a 15% charge. And 2 additional drivers, we have a 22% charge. Now, what you've got to do now is print off all the formulae and functions that you've used. So to do that, you need to change to formulae and function view. So if we go to this, we can actually show formulas. We can cut down some of these columns because we don't need them. What we mustn't do is truncate any of the formulae themselves. So as long as we've got this sort of stuff showing, we'll be fine. And I should be able to do that now in landscape, and that should print out for us. So if we were to change our page layout to landscape, now it's still not quite fitting on. We'll just pull that in a bit. Keep pulling column A in. We should get there eventually. What we can of course do is when we go to print is just say that we want to fit all the columns on one page, and that will solve that problem. Making sure our row and column headings are there. So that's your formula view that you need to do, so make sure that that is done. You then also need to have your name manager. So if we go to name manager, we'll need to make this a bit bigger. The 2 columns that you're interested in is the name and what it refers to. Okay, so those are the bits that can't be truncated, but that's what you need to screenshot for your name manager. But it can also help if you actually highlight everything that you've done. So we'll just open another worksheet, and you can see in this worksheet that what I've done is highlighted wherever there is a named cell and written down what its name is. Another way, just print it off, highlight it and write it down. This is really helpful to your teacher for marking it, and it means that they're going to be finding the marks that you've given. It's also going to be helpful to the moderators. You want to keep your moderators on side, because if they're on side, they're more likely to give you a benefit of doubt. Therefore, you're more likely to get a mark than lose a mark. But it's also helpful for you. But if you're highlighting as you go along, and you can just handwrite these on what named ranges you're using, you're going to be able to follow what you're doing much easier. So if we go to vehicle rates, we can see here how we've shown what they're named as well, and we can see the named ranges in this area. So that's a really helpful way of doing it.